Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in.
Therapists don't always day drink, but we don't always not day drink.
But we always have a reason if we do. Unless you're the kind that drinks and then you end up in the back of the magazine. Psychology Today magazine.
Not,
right?
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's
therapist magazine.
Yes, that's too much. You don't want to do anything that would end you up in the back of the magazine.
No.
So, food for thought if you're listening
Deep
to this.
Deep Thoughts by Talia and Adam.
People are like, this is not what I tuned in. Don't get caught is basically it. No.
Well, that is life in a nutshell. Anyways.
Today we have a very poignant topic for our listeners that we will attempt to blend two concepts of adult romantic relationships and parenthood. And the title is Confronting the Past, Why Healing... I'm going to add that, why healing the unhealed parts is important throughout parenthood and partnership or in relationships. Wherever you go, there you are. And you can't outrun the past or avoid the past as much as you might like. So we're going to try to process thoroughly but briefly at the same time the unavoidable mirror of parenthood and relationships, the myth of avoidance, why the past always catches up, even if you try to avoid it. And then healing as a lifelong journey, which includes strategies for growth and how to connect, not only stay connected to whatever it might be, your adult romantic partner or your child, but stay connected to yourself and what's true for you throughout the seasons and changes, because relationships, ideally, even if you're not with the person, they do last a lifetime if you have kids with them. And then parenthood is different seasons, month to month, really, in the beginning. And like we were joking off air, even when your 18-month-old acts like an 18-year-old, it comes at you fast. So you got to be prepped, but not too stuck to a plan that you're not flexible also. So that's what we will cover today. And I will, I'll have you take it away and then I'll jump in.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to just come out swinging on this because
do it.
I've already sat with a couple clients today. It is the 2nd of January. It's 2025, and it has been time to share this little takeaway, which is the thing that sucks the most about moving into a new year is you move yourself into it. So you are bringing all of you. I love when I say it's a new year, new you. That only counts if you have, you pop out of a coma.
Yeah.
Okay. The reality is, in a 24-hour period, you did not just all of a sudden change all your maladaptive coping skills.
And negate your past, Yeah,
this isn't a doom and gloom episode either.
No.
I'm just I'm jacked up on Mountain Dew over here, and I'm ready to share the word. So, I'm
proselytizing, okay?
Yeah, here we go. Because this is what's interesting. Therapy is the intentional practice of dealing with the uncomfortable emotions I don't want to recognize. That is why we do therapy. Now, a lot of times people don't get therapy. They don't understand it. Why would you do it, right? Because I do think that there is a majority of individuals out there who have decided to actually ignore their own intuition, what their body, their heart, their soul, and their mind tell them. And so what they end up doing is they go, oh, I feel this is inconvenient. These are uncomfortable emotions, whatever it is. And then we find some sort of distraction to bury ourselves in. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's parenthood. Maybe it's, X, Y, or Z. It's all the above. And this is where you see the toxicity of these certain roles that we will assign to ourselves start to leach themselves out. I can see this sometimes in the micromanaging mom, who, again, she's not going to work with all of the other inconvenient emotions she is experiencing. So she's going to project that on the kids, the household, the marriage, the stuff like that. The father, who is also dealing with inconvenient emotions. Maybe he doesn't make himself present because his kids are amplifiers. They make him feel a lot of emotions he doesn't want to feel. His wife makes him feel emotions he doesn't want to feel. And so his experience is, well, I'll make myself an island. I will
Mm,
only show up for gourmet activities. We'll do the vacations, we'll do the movies, we'll do
yeah.
the dinners out, but I'm not going to be present for the times in which I have to sit back and ask, why do I feel? What do I feel?
Self-reflective. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And, this is a conversation that we need to have more often because I like to tell my clients it's like having the intuition of like speed bumps, right? I don't
Mm,
always have to know the emotions I'm feeling, but I can pay attention to the patterns of how I deal with certain emotions. So, like, when all of a sudden I want to plant myself on the couch and eat everything that's in the fridge, I probably can harken back and be like, maybe there's an emotion or something that I'm
what
not
am
really
I
happy
feeling that
with.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to eat away? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, just don't eat, just don't do that. Like, we're so quick to just shame any one action, right?
Mm,
And especially when I'm working with uh, my clients that are addicted to sex or
mhm.
pornography or anything like that, I take a different stand. I don't go straight after the sex. I don't go straight after the pornography. And people, maybe their ears are perking up. What do you mean by this? Because I don't think that demonizing the act of physical intimacy is the way that you're going to live a more sustainable life. I think it's going to, why do I want to do this with strangers at that capacity? Or why do I
Mm,
feel that I have a better sexual relationship with a phone screen than with another human being?
mm.
And so these are those sort of like ways of, instead of just pointing out symptoms and saying, I don't want this, the saying I've got lately is there's no intellectual Tylenol. Like, don't just like, oh, there's a pain there, I just want the pain to go away. We're
Mm,
so in Western culture ingrained into this idea of let's mitigate symptoms instead of treating root causes. And that's what this
yeah.
podcast is going to be about today. It's like getting
Yeah.
to root causes.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue for the first talking point, that root cause, or the core theme that either your adult relationships are bringing up from your childhood or your own parenthood experience is bringing
Hmm.
up from your childhood. Both the root cause is childhood. Why I pick the
Mm,
partners that I pick. Like, yes, there's evolutionary psychology of the attraction piece of it, but
yeah.
why am I drawn to participate in certain patterns, or why am I drawn to the avoidance of wanting to participate in certain patterns,
Hmm.
like we talked about off air? If I find myself yelling at my kid when they're also having big emotions, what is
Yeah.
that about? Okay, let me maybe not in the moment because that might be stressful or too triggering. Let me go back when I have a moment to myself and go, what is that pattern about? And I do work with a lot of
Mm,
parents who are like, I promised myself I would never repeat my childhood. I got yelled at as a kid and I don't want to yell, but I can't stop. And my mom came out of my mouth, right? Or my dad slipped out.
yeah.
And I think that is the necessary first step, is understanding, okay, even if, like you're saying, I don't want to shame the behavior. Okay, yelling. You don't want to yell. I will get to that in a moment. What is at the core of it? Are you feeling dysregulated? Are you feeling out of control? Are you feeling jealous that your kid gets to express themselves in a way you never did? And when
Mm,
you were a kid and tried to express yourself, your parents yelled, shut you down because your big emotions were too big for them because they didn't feel anything at
yeah.
all. You were just allowed to feel happy. Anything else, you just shove that shit down and you ignore it till it goes away. If that's the template you're working
Mhm.
from, let's validate, not excuse, validate. Of course, you're going to
Mm,
yell. Of course, you're going to be stressed out because you have no internal coping skills for
yeah.
how to deal with anyone's big emotions. So, next time that
Mm,
happens, make sure your kid is safe and cared for. You can step away, go to the other room, scream into a pillow, turn the sink water on and splash your face, come back out in 20
yeah.
seconds, even. Again, make sure they're safe, and come back and go, I would like to try that again. I am feeling really frustrated right now or out of control. Like, try to name the emotion and
Mhm.
hold on to it. And I didn't handle that well. I didn't handle it the way that I wanted to. But again, that is multiple layers.
Mhm.
That's just like a preview of multiple layers of doing the work that hopefully today we walk you through. Well, I'm stuck at I'm just getting triggered. How do I work through that? You're getting triggered because some part of you didn't get tended to in your childhood, whether that's
Mm,
triggered in your parenting and your kid's out of control and you just want them to comply because it would make your life easier. Kids are not compliant naturally. They're trying to become their own person. Or in your adult romantic relationship, you feel out of control, you feel
mm,
frustrated or chaotic, and you would just do what I want you to do or do what I asked you to do, then I could get more of me. And a lot of it is the
Mm,
struggle of, I want more of myself. I want more access to myself. I want more freedom. But that's the double bind that being in a relationship or having kids puts us in. Freedom looks different and doesn't look the exact same. And that, I think, is one of the core triggers also, is stemming from our childhood experience. We spend our childhood desperately trying to become an adult because we think that's going to be this false sense of freedom. Then once we get into adulthood, what do we find ourselves? Bound to an adult romantic
mm,
relationship where there are rules and beholden to certain responsibilities in parenthood. If we're a parent, the freedom is fleeting. The freedom that we had is maybe like a little bit of adolescence in our 20s before we had to answer to somebody, or somebody was looking to us to be like, oh,
mm-hmm,
I'm the adult. Oh shit. Like, how am I supposed to figure this out? So your childhood is going to be discovered and stumbled upon if you're not actively doing the work, because it is, again, like we said, that unavoidable mirror of parenthood and relationships. Wherever you go, there you are. You can't outrun yourself. Parenthood and intimate relationships do act as mirrored, and they will
mm-hmm.
reflect all of your healed and unhealed shit to work through.
And just like, because I was doing a consultation the other day, and this client, potential client, was saying, like, oh, I just don't want to go into therapy to hate on my parents. And it's like, that is not actually what we do in therapy. But it is starting to be like a stereotype that's coming out. I can see
Yeah.
it popping up on Instagram and TikTok where people are like, oh, therapy is just about finding new ways to hate my dad. And
Or
it
bash them.
is,
Yeah.
it's like, you laugh about it, right? But in the reality of it, there are areas that we can have some introspection on. Like, it's not about hating your parents, but in what ways did they not meet you emotionally?
Yes.
Okay, that's not actually taken away from anything that your father or your mother did for you. It's
No.
not taken away from their sacrifice at
Mm-mm.
all. But if you don't ask yourself that question, you're going to find yourself rolling into relationships where then you come to an unconscious understanding or belief that I will never have those needs met, so I'll settle for less. And that's why, like, I love to there's a new modality every time you wake up in the therapy world, but one
True.
that I've really enjoyed is the imago therapy, or
Yes.
like modality, because I think that it nails a lot in regards to the essential takeaway is, whether you're male, you're female, you will look, for a romantic partner that will match somewhat of a profile of the opposite sex parent that you grew up with. Okay, so, mm, a lot of people go like, "No, I would never marry my mom," and then you actually
And then
start
you look
thinking
and you
about,
go, oh, fuck, I married my mom.
"Fuck!" Like, but it's, yeah, it's pretty close. There, like,
Hmm.
even the healthiest of individuals, uh,
It's
you
the good
get.
and bad traits. Imago is
Oh,
both the good
absolutely.
and the bad. Consciously, though, we're so focused on how do I find the good? How do I find the good? How do I find the good? That we look past, or we look
Yeah.
over the red flags, the bad, the, oh, they have
Mhm.
a great sense of humor like my dad, but they're also super stern and yell at me like he did too. And if you're not willing, like you're saying that consult, to come in and at least confront, hey, my parents did all these great things, but they also did
Mhm.
some shitty things. And just so you know, every parent has to go through this confrontation.
Yeah.
You're not going to get everything right. It's going to
No.
be okay. It doesn't mean you failed as a person or you're the worst parent in the world where they split and go all to the bad
Mhm.
object. That's not the case. You were going to have both good and bad traits. And as an adult, you picking your romantic partners, you're going to seek somebody who has the same good and bad traits of both of your parents. We can do
Mhm.
the worksheet. I give it to all of my students and all of my supervisees, and they're like, oh, God. And I'm like, it's okay though. Like,
Why?
everybody does this. Your parents set the subconscious blueprint for what you look for in an adult
Yeah.
romantic partner as a way to get those unmet needs met from childhood. But that's not how life works. You're an
Mhm.
adult now. It's your job to meet the needs.
It's interesting because what people will then do is they, like you were saying, they'll focus on all of the good things that
Hmm.
a person brings in their life. But I mean, we're talking about stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. They'll
Hmm.
talk about
Hmm.
the humor, but they won't talk about how they're avoidant or how they're
Yeah.
not emotionally accessible,
Yes.
right? And so what ends up happening is then we also become really resentful to the person that's in front of us in the present because they're not showing up how we needed our parents to show up in our past.
Hmm.
Okay, so like, I think that I always talk about fair shakes. You got to give fair shakes. Like,
Yep.
you can't show up to a relationship and essentially whisper that these are all the things you want from a person while you silently resent them for not meeting all these other standards.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people will present with a level of, this is honesty. My actions, my based actions and behaviors are honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you the relationship I want, the world I exist in, how I see things. Believe them.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, that's when we fall back into the, not the, I'm going to change them, I'm not going to go down that road. It's more of the, well, that is obviously something they're going to grow out of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, if I know anything from like motivational interviewing, if there's actually not a need or a reason, they're
Or the person doesn't know they quote unquote should be growing out of something,
they're
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 not going
not
to grow
going
out
to.
of it. What? They don't know it exists to grow out of. How would they do
No.
that? Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewire your relationships or check the link in the show notes for more. I think that brings us to that second talking point is the myth of avoidance. Like your
Mm,
past will always catch up to you, even in
yep.
ways you did think. Like some people are like, oh, I
Yeah.
got to really go back and address that because clearly that's been a pattern. But in ways that you didn't realize at all, and what you end up suppressing, like repression is your brain's way. It's not a conscious defense mechanism. It's your brain's way of like, if you experience something so traumatic, it just completely shuts it off and is like, we're not going to make that a memory because that's really
Hmm.
going to fuck with them. It's repression. It's not an
Hmm.
active thing. When I'm suppressing something, I'm actively shoving it down or
Yeah.
tucking it away. And then maybe other defenses, I rationalize, I'm in denial, like
Hmm.
I'm using other skills to keep it at bay.
Oh, for sure.
What you end up suppressing will end up boiling out in probably the worst possible
Mm,
times. And then you look at that, you're like, I thought I got away from that. I thought I avoided that. You can't avoid the past, and
mm-mm.
avoidance will show up in what you're trying to avoid will end up showing up in the patterns and the relational dynamics in which you participate
Yeah.
in your adult relationships and in your parenting as well. Well, if I'm just going to avoid all of my feelings growing up, here I am going to be confronted with my kids' feelings, who it's my job to help
Mm,
them emotionally regulate the amygdala before their prefrontal cortex is fully online and like all systems are a go. I have to do that. I can't avoid
mm,
emotions anymore. Maybe I suppressed it for my own adulthood, but I can't suppress
yeah.
it and I don't want to suppress it for my child's childhood. Or I can't push away because this
Yeah.
person I really want and a healthy relationship is in front of me, but they're asking me to feel my feelings and they want to access me and locate me emotionally. And I don't know how to do that. That's where you actually do have to go to therapy and do the work if you want the relationships that you claim you want, or if you want to be the parent that you claim that you want to be. It's going to require you to confront and not
Yeah.
avoid what you've been running away from. Ignored pain doesn't disappear, it manifests in
Mm.
ways that affect your closest relationships.
Well,
That's where I
next
have to
topic.
say.
Just kidding.
Well,
I mean, like,
and there you go. But
and
it's
there
true.
you
If you
go.
ignore it, it's going to come up until you can't anymore. And that's where my favorite thing to do is ask clients, like, not blaming, but did any part of you, like, kind of know this was going to happen? And I do this to myself too. And I'm like, no, there were flags. Flags were missed. Flags were thrown. Flags were repainted. But there were flags. It's not a
Oh
total
yeah.
shock. It's rarely is it like a complete 180 blindside. And this has been on other
It's not a
podcasts too.
Lifetime movie, dude.
No,
It
no, but
doesn't like
even yeah, with
there's not a
substance
flip of
use,
the script.
with affairs, with my kids aren't close to me. I wonder why, because you worked every day of their childhood. And I was talking to a colleague about that recently, and
Mm,
the parent is in a different season of their work life now in retirement and would like to be really involved in ways that they weren't from the child's upbringing. Now they're in their late teens, and they're like, you're 20 years too late. Like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
great that
you
you want
can't
to be
make
involved now, but you can't make up for lost time and all the 10, 20 years of emotional neglect. Sorry. And that parent is having to deal with their repercussions of their choices.
yeah, don't be surprised that when you make yourself an elective in someone else's life, they actually take you
I'm
as
going to
being
move
an
on.
elective.
Well,
Like
I'm not
they
going to make you a priority for, like, that is the deep part of the pain that I see
mm,
in that generational trauma of the child or adolescent is like, I want to be important to my mom. I want to be important to my dad. Why don't they love me? It's the Will Smith from Fresh Prince
mhm,
at, when he's talking to Phil, and they have a very like actual close
boom.
relationship in real
Yeah.
life. And he's like, why doesn't my dad love me? And then the
Mm,
parents, or why doesn't my mom love me? Well, I do love you. I bought you all this stuff. I'm working all this time to do this. I'm doing that. I'm doing that. That's not necessarily how children interpret and equate love. It's like the parable where the little boy goes, Dad, how much is an hour of your time? And I can't go into the whole thing because I will sob like a mess the whole day. And he asks for, donation here, or um, allowance here, or this. And okay, Mom, I'm going to go into it. And he finally saves up whatever it was, $100, and he gives it to his dad at night and goes, Dad, I want to buy an hour of your time. And it's so sad because the kid just wants to have time with the parent. And there you are, like, me reading the story, of course. I'm like, that is so sad. But that's how many people do we see in our office sitting there where the parent is like, has this long term plan of,
mhm.
I'm going to provide everything I never got in childhood. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with wanting to provide a life that you didn't get to have. But make sure you're not so busy doing that that your kid has to feel like they need to buy an hour of your uninterrupted time. Like, checking yourself
On
on that. That is trauma based.
the life that we never had is
Yeah.
also the life that our kid isn't asking us for.
Right.
So, like, the interesting fact here is we are so willing, and again, Western culture,
Yeah.
that we are willing to say, "Well, I'll give you all these things, but we will leave ourselves off the table." And that's also that those inconvenient and uncomfortable emotions popping up again. Because
Yeah.
guess what? It's difficult for me to sit here and recognize how much my 18-month-old daughter can love me and what that feels like when it's unconditional, where you're like, you don't even know me. She doesn't know me in many ways.
Yeah.
And that's the blessing that I think you get in parenthood, is that your kid only gets to know you as you, right? Like, they don't need to know the history, and they don't care about the
No.
history. I mean, that's what I loved when I was working in Skid Row, and I was working with criminals that were being diverted out of prison and whatnot, is that when we would do family days, I just loved hearing daddy and mama, because their kids didn't see them as, I mean, you could have face tattoos, you could have all this, and guess what? Those little girls, those little boys love the hell out of their parents,
Dada,
right?
mama. Yeah.
And that's when it was like, dude, this is so much a bigger thing of like, are you willing to give your kids you? That's what they're asking for. They're not asking for the money, they're not asking for the financial well-being. Like, this also takes away from the grit and resiliency of just who we are as humans. Like, we do not need the comfort, we need the presence.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter that you can take your kids to Disneyland. I had a breakthrough with a family that I'm working with right now, that they have done very well for themselves. They have been able to give their kids everything they've ever wanted, right? But they're now getting to that spot where their kids are in their mid 20s, and the kids are now starting to fire back with, they're frustrated about things. They're frustrated that when they're experiencing things relationally in their own lives, they're doing it for the first time because their parents didn't role model any of this to them, or they don't know how to deal with it because they're used to two parents living opposite lives but living at the same address. Like, there's these aspects where it's like your kids are yearning to learn wisdom from you, not to have gourmet experiences from you. So
Hmm.
that's great that you can take them on a Disney cruise, but you do that for what, 7 days out of 365? So, like, how often are you able to take these gourmet experiences and then even make them add up to a majority of your time?
Yeah.
The reality is, at the breakfast table, at the dinner table,
Yeah.
on the couch,
Yes.
that's where
Car
most,
rides home to and
yes,
from school, what
that's where the
was so and
magic
so, yeah,
happens.
all of those little moments. And that's the case in adult romantic relationships
Mhm.
too. the little moments are what ends up making the bigger difference and biggest difference over the course
Mm,
of the lifespan of the relationship. That's great that we went on a Disney cruise or a trip or whatever else, but like, were you there for me when I came home from school and got bullied
mm,
and felt like I had no one? And my mom was there, my dad was there. Were you there for me? And or
yeah.
maybe you literally couldn't be, but I called you on the phone and you picked up, right? I'm not saying
Yep.
parents have to feel this like eternal pressure to just sit at home and do nothing. That's not healthy. Like, we're not saying pause your entire life just to be there, but
Yeah.
you being available and being able to be located, being able to be accessed, being present, or if you can't be,
Yeah.
vocalizing and saying, I have a super important meeting. You are the most important thing to me.
Mm,
If you need me to, I will cancel it, or I will get so and so. Like, enlisting other people who are like allo parents is also how you can
hmm.
show your kids, like, I'm not going to mess them up the
Yeah.
same way that I was messed up in childhood. And I think that brings us to that key, like, last piece is, as ChatGPT kindly wrote for us, healing your past wounds strengthens your ability to connect authentically, leading you to having healthier relationships and being a better
Mm,
parent. And it's okay to mess up. We're not going to get it all right. Even you and I don't get it right all
hmm.
the time. And we're clinically and classically, I guess you could say, trained in this. We're human
Absolutely.
first, though. And the important part is
Mm,
understanding, like, is my intent to do better than I've done before? Is my intent to give my child a more well-rounded childhood than I had? Is my intent to give my all, not sacrificially, but like
hmm.
really show up and do all the skills that I can learn to have a good enough relationship? And can I go to bed? Can I look myself in the morning, in the
Mm,
beginning of the day, and go, I can do my best? Can I look myself in the mirror at night after all is said and done and go, I did the best I could with what I
yeah.
had at the time, and I'm open for feedback? And if my kid ever comes to me, or if Lorelai ever comes to you and is like, hey mom, hey dad, this really messed me up or whatever, can I hear them out and go, wow, I
I
am
hear you.
sorry. I messed up. I'm sorry. Like, I would like to apologize. I hear you.
Mm,
If it helps you to know my background, I'll share. If not, screw that. You don't need to listen to whatever reason I'm going to get. Like, being real and being authentic is the key to having those
mm,
healthy, successful relationships, not letting the past haunt or guide you to the point where you're not authentic. It's like, when you're
mm,
doing the best, it looks different than what you were probably given growing up. And if you don't have a blueprint for that, therapy is the best place, with a good therapist that you feel like there's rapport, to help
yeah.
you. How do I be someone I'm not? How do I
Mm,
not be like my dad? And what do I replace it with? Or how do I be more like my
yeah.
mom? She was so patient or whatever. Teach me. And it's okay to not know that intuitively, because look at your blueprint. Everybody's trying to grow from somewhere.
I mean, you've heard me say it before. I just think it rings true in this moment. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. So, like,
Hmm.
1% change is still change.
Hmm.
And these are the things that we're trying to do. I love that, like, in this like third talking point, we're talking about like the lifelong journey of this.
Hmm.
But then let's use the framework of that, of like it's baby steps. You said little moments. I agree with
Hmm.
you. It's also baby
Hmm.
steps.
Yep.
Like, instead of thinking that this life is a sprint or it's a marathon, or
Yeah.
as you know, you've got to take and just put one foot in front of the other. And some days you're going to go a long distance emotionally and physically, and other days you're going to just get out of bed, and there's still a victory in that process. But that's also another point. We don't want to have victories of small things. Like, you know what, if you failed in the way of like what you're supposed to turn in to work, or you forgot to pay a bill but your kid felt safe with you today, still a win.
Hmm.
And we'll be like, yeah, but we should, right? Here comes the shame. Like, you're never going to shame yourself into a life that you want to live. You're never
No.
going to shame yourself into a position of happiness or content. So, what we could look at is, yeah, you are actually role modeling to your child what 99% of the world will not, which is imperfection, a desire for repair, a desire to do better tomorrow than you did today. These are all things that bring hope. The other thing, when we look at perfection and demanding results or whatever, what we're really doing is we're trying to sign our child up for a life of servitude to ideals, beliefs, obligations that are not their own.
Yeah.
And in our stead, the projections of others. I'll never forget. I had one client was like, you know what? After talking to you, I thought about like shame and projection, and it's like a laser pointer, and I'm the cat. Like, I'm chasing shit that isn't mine. And I'm like, all right, we might have to
love
back
that.
down on the CBD,
Also,
but
who's your dealer? Because I'm
yeah,
into that shit.
like that shit deep, dude. Like that is not Pineapple Express, but I know like this is. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like everyone's pointing out everything that you should do, and you spend all this energy, you never catch it because it wasn't actually your thought. You just thought you needed to do it.
The best thing to do before you do anything is to ask yourself, like, is this actually something I need to do and is expected of me, that's been
Mm,
vocalized, that's like a need? Or
yeah,
is it some projective internal pressure, a should? Well, I shouldn't do this and I should do that. And there's rare things in life, like with parenting. We
yeah.
should be attuned. That is true.
We would
We
like to
should
be, yes.
strive for a secure attachment, and we should, as much as possible, do the oxygen mask and try
Hmm.
to meet our own needs before we meet the needs of others. Like,
Yeah,
it's a nightmare to try to feed a toddler breakfast when you're starving, right? You like eat the
true.
granola bar first so you have blood sugar to do that, then go make the eggs and whatever
Yeah.
else. So it's learning, how do I care for myself so that I can care for
Mm,
others, but not assume I need to care for others in such a way that causes like a self-sacrifice. That's like
yeah.
a real roundabout of healing, because eventually children become adults and you'd like your adult to want to be around you,
Hmm.
but it's not a guarantee that they will want to be around you. So like my
Correct.
method of parenting is like very intensive, very attuned, very much with the developmental stages, and eventually she will be her own adult that's internalized all the people around her, that she can become ideally her own competent, functioning, emotionally attuned,
Hmm.
secure person who knows family will always be there for her. That's like my
Hmm.
ultimate goal for her. And it's the projections and the shame and everything else that can kind of get us sidetracked. It's like, that's not important. The most important thing is that I can be
Yeah.
as present as possible. That's my mic drop.
I think when you start recognizing, especially, and kids drag this out of you, but when you start recognizing how often you say no to them, start thinking about how often you say no to yourself, right? Like, because a lot of times we're very focused on fear with our kids when it comes to like, oh, I don't want them to get burned. I don't want them to fall. I don't want them to,
Yeah.
all again, good reasons to say no. But also start recognizing that a lot of times when we step in with that word no, we stop the exploration. Like we immediately think of the worst thing that happens and
Mm-hmm.
we go, "Oh, don't do that." Where I've noticed that like I'm trying to be very strategic with how I say no. Don't want my daughter to get hurt, but I also need my daughter to learn certain things that are
Limits and
experiential.
boundaries. Right. Yes.
Because if I'm just again in that servitude phase, well, I don't do that because I've always been told not to do that. Guess what? When I'm no longer around, she's not going to then stop doing these things.
No, the goal is that they understand
Why?
why they like, that's what I teach parents too, even before I became a parent biologically, that the goal is that they have enough of your voice, like Jiminy Cricket, internalized, that they know the
Yeah.
difference from right from wrong without you having to tell them, no, don't do that, yes, do this. The
Yeah.
permissions and injunctions, they rest on the logical and deductive reasoning of like, okay, the last 9 times this was unsafe and this seems like it's going to be unsafe, so I'm going to venture a guess this might be unsafe and I'm not going to do it. That's the goal, is that you parent in a way that they can internalize the morality, the
Hmm.
values, the right and wrong, and eventually make those decisions for themselves. Character is who you are when no one's looking. They should know, if you teach them, don't get in a car with somebody who's a drunk
Mm,
driver that's unsafe in this, and they see that and at a party and they go,
yeah.
I don't care about the social repercussions of not being cool, I want to live, I'm not getting in that car.
I want to live.
Right? They've
Yeah.
learned right from wrong. So that could be, actually, that should be our next episode. How do you parent your child so that they can learn morality and values?
Oh, I can't wait. I've got
Yeah.
that one set up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no, because I again, when you have that experiential component of why I'm not going to do the thing, it's then a lot easier for me to stay away from it. And that has been like my breakthrough in my addiction work.
Mm-hmm.
Is instead of saying no, let's talk about what happened when you did. How did that benefit you? Just walk me through it. What did it benefit? And that's what I think in addiction, a lot of people are scared to roll into that because, like, well, you're going to glorify it. I'm not going to glorify it, but let's talk about it. So, getting high fucking feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happened with all these relationships? Oh, I couldn't meet my needs and I couldn't meet other people's needs. And then I ended up here I am. Right. So, I hope that the takeaway you're getting from this podcast
Yeah.
is that we have to move into a direction of like understanding the repercussions of our actions, allowing those to help guide us, but not to be boundary points that don't allow us to progress past our previous versions.
Yeah, definitely.
Deuces.
We'll see you in 2 weeks
See you in
to
2
drop some
weeks.
knowledge.
We'll
All
see
right.
how this freaking 2025 is going, man. It's been a burner on day one.
Truly.
Yeah, I mean, good
Truly.
Lord.
Yeah,
Okay.
check in with us. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.